Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about Ceres in Taurus in a natal chart. Now, Ceres in astrology can be connected with how one may nurture and care, and given that this is in Taurus, one may like to nurture or be nurtured through material items, monetary reward or gain, possessions, just general loyalty and steadfastness, and also perhaps through creature comforts. I think people with this placement would often like to be nurtured through peace and tranquility, and even a stable environment and setting. Uh, Another thing that Ceres in astrology can be associated with, it could be connected with dissipated or diminished self-worth, or how one may feel about themselves. Now, given that this is Taurus, this may be connected with monetary dilemmas or issues. Um, it could be simply about, maybe it has something to do with one's values. It could be through lack of persistence or tenacity in, in being able. Uh, it could also be, given again that we're talking about the zodiac sign Taurus again. It could be something connected with possessions, or it may be something of a material nature, not having maybe as much as another person. It could just be really. It might be connected with love in some cases. Remember that Taurus is ruled by Venus. Um, it may be connected with maybe a lack of maybe a diminished romantic life, perhaps, and it might impact how one may feel about themselves. It could also be, now in some cases, looking at Ceres in astrology as well, could also be connected with disorders of that are associated with food and eating. Now, given that this is Taurus energy, it could be something of something with gluttony. Perhaps it could be something connected with overindulgence, if there's some kind of binging connected with this, with this person, people that have this, anyone that has this. It may be just the simple, just the strong, the love of the food, and going completely overboard. It could be sweet items. Taurus energy can be about sweet tooth, sweet teeth, so to speak, because it is ruled by Venus. So it could really be strongly connected with the simple infatuation of food. And in any way, well, Ceres in astrology can also be associated with raising children. Now, if you're somebody that's a mother or a father, and you're parenting a child, it could very likely be that you do raise the child with very strong values. It could be encouraging stability in one's life, patience and perseverance, and also instilling, not just the good values, but also letting the child know that the importance, the significance of being loyalty and in persistence with things, having follow through, being able to finish what is started, and also calmness as well, whether it may be in a crisis situation or what have you. If you have this, say, in the 8th house in your natal chart, it could be where you're emphasizing those emergency situations or crisis situations, and ability to show calmness and unflappable energy, and not to go to pieces. And really, I think too, when you look at Ceres in astrology as well, it can be associated with people taking somebody through coercion, or against one's will. And it is associated, Ceres can be associated with abduction and kidnapping. Now, in the isolated case that somebody that has this placement would be involved in this, this could be involved where somebody is abducted. It could be due to somebody finally reaching their point of endurance. They became desperate. Taurus energy could be very stubborn and obstinate, and this could be done with much more willful energy, and it might be tied into something connected with greed and avarice. When somebody's abducted, it almost always is going to be connected with something of a monetary nature. But given that it's Taurus, it could even be more pronounced and more prominent because Taurus is the sign that's synonymous, of course, with money. Of course, this could be very well be where a bank can be involved more so than the other placements, because banks, I mean, you're talking about anything monetary related. So anyway, but again, this is very isolated, and most people are never abducted anyway, or taken against their will through some kind of coercion or forcible energy. Ceres in astrology can also be connected with family connections. Now, the fact that this is in Taurus, the family connections can very well be very constant, persistent, steady, stable, and have a lot of peaceful and tranquil energy. They could be very tenacious, but you might see them in some cases as being somewhat boring and monotonous. And of course, in that, you got to look for any contraindicators in your natal chart as well. Like if you have the moon in Gemini, for example, your family life might actually be a little bit more interesting and have more variety, more diverse activities than the typical person that would have Ceres in Taurus. But anyway, and another thing too is, I mean, the family connection can also be seen as very trustworthy, having a lot of peace, again, the stability, but can be very stolid. And it could be just energy where you just basically, was very predictable and knew what you were going to be doing with these the people involved in your family. Of course, their family members' natal charts have to be taken into account in consideration of all. Somebody that has a strong, dominant Aquarius or Gemini chart, that's a family member, will be a little bit more unpredictable. It's than the average person. So you have to remember that astrology is very intricate, very complicated. But anyway, now Ceres in astrology can also be connected with sorrow, dejection, disappointment. It can be connected with like despondency. And given that this is Taurus energy, there might be some sorrow and sadness connected with sensual pleasures, maybe not having what one needs and feeling deprived of those issues to some degree. It could be sorrow in connection with values, with money, with agriculture. It could be architecture. It could be over things that were built. And maybe, if you were working for somebody and you were under contract, for example, building something, you didn't get what you were supposed to get monetarily. It could be over possessions. It could be connected with self-worth, self-esteem, and how you may feel about yourself. Now, Ceres in astrology can also be very protective and clinging energy. This could be a person that could be very protective and clinging of one's belongings and possessions. And the person may very well cling, so to speak, to their bank, their savings account if they had. Some cases this may manifest in some kind of hoarding issue. Say if this is making an adverse aspect to your natal Pluto, for example, it could in some isolated cases be a compulsive hoarding issue, or somebody that is completely very obsessed with things of a monetary or material nature, but that could be very remote and isolated. Ceres in astrology can also be associated with clothing, and given that this is Taurus energy, it can be very conservative, basic, regular clothing that's certainly not very flamboyant or ostentatious. Now, of course, again, going back to contraindicators in the chart, somebody with a Leo sun or ascendant, of course, might wear garb that might be a little bit more, more flamboyant, more flashy, and would stand out a little more than the typical person that has Ceres in Taurus. Now, Ceres in astrology can also be associated with obliterating things that in order to restore something in one's life. Now, given that this is Taurus energy, in some cases this could be simply about ending some kind of greed or avaricious mindset or what have you, in order to have peace and tranquility in one's life. And let's say somebody has this in their 12th house in their natal chart. It could be ending things that were a very material nature that might have been oneself undoing in order to have maybe peace on a spiritual level in their life. And I'm just throwing it out there as an isolated example. Anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying, stay well.